Good morning and welcome to Psalms in Hebrew and Comparative Translations. This morning we are going to study Psalm 37, and as Larry pointed out just a moment ago before our class formally started, there are some similarities between the content of this psalm and what is known as the Sermon on the Mount. One of Jesus's most famous sermons. And we can definitely look at Matthew chapter 5 as we as we discuss the content of this psalm. Certainly my sense is that this psalm predates Jesus's Sermon on the Mount, and so we might say that Jesus maybe was influenced in some sense by this psalm, or that Jesus and the psalmist are both tapped into a intellectual social circle that is talking about these ideas. So we can definitely approach some of these questions as we discuss, but we'll start by reading the psalm. It's a longer psalm, so I'm only going to read two translations, but I'm going to read the whole thing in Hebrew because I think it's nice to hear it in its original form. All right, Psalm 37. LeDavid, al titchar bamreim, al tekane be'osei avla. Ki chechatzir mehera yimalu, uchiyerek deshe yibolun. B'tach baronai v'asei tov shchan eretz u're'ei emunah, v'hitanag al Adonai v'yitain lecha mishalot libecha. Gol al Adonai darkecha uv'tach alav v'hu yaseh, v'hotzi ha'or tzidkecha u'mishpatecha katzoraim. Dom l'Adonai v'hitcholel lo, al titchar b'matzliach darko, b'ish oseh mizimot. Heref me'af va'azov chema, al titchar ach lehareah. Ki mireim yikaretun v'kovei Adonai hema yirshu aretz, ve'od me'at ve'ein rasha, v'hitbonanta al mekomo ve'einenu. Va'anavim yirshu aretz, v'hit angu al rov shalom, zomem rasha latzadik, v'chorek alav shinav. Adonai yischak lo ki ra'a ki yavo yomo, cherev patchu reshaim v'darchu kashtam, lehapil ani ve'evyon, litvoach yishrei darech. Charbam tavo v'libam v'kashtotam tishavarna, tov me'at latzadik mehamon reshaim rabim, ki zeroot reshaim tishabarna, v'somech tzadikim Adonai. Yodea Adonai yemei timimim v'nachalatam leolam tiyeh, lo yevoshu be'et ra'a uvimei re'avon yisba'u. Ki reshaim yovedu ve'oivei Adonai kikar karim, kalu ve'ashan kalu. Loveh rasha ve'lo yishalem ve'tzadik chonen ve'noten, ki mevorachav yirshu aretz umekul alav yikaretun, me'adonai mitzadei gaver konanu v'darko yichpatz. Ki yipol lo yutal, ki Adonai somech yado, na'ar hayiti gam zakanti, v'lo ra'iti tzadik nezav v'zaro mevakesh lachem. Kol hayom chonen umalveh v'zaro livracha, sur meira v'asei tov u'shchon leolam. Ki Adonai ohev mishpat v'lo yazov et chasidav leolam nishmaru, v'zera reshaim nichrat. Tzadikim yirshu aretz v'ishkanu la'ad aleha. Ki pi tzadik yegeh chochma u'lshono tdaber mishpat, Torat Elohav b'libo lo tim'ad ashurav, Tzofer Rasha LaTzadik, Umivakesh Lahamito, Adonai lo ya'azvenu bayado, velo yarshienu behish shofto. Kaveh el Adonai, ushmor darko, viromimcha lareshet aretz, behi karet rishaim tireh. Ra'iti rasha aritz, umit areh ke'ezrach ra'anan. Vaya avor v'hinei enenu va'avakshehu v'lo nimtza shemor tam u're'eh yashar ki acharit leish shalom ufoshim nishmedu yachtav acharit reshaim nichrata uchuat tzadikim me'Adonai ma'uzam ba'et tzara vayazreim Adonai v'yafaltem me'reshaim v'yosheim ki chasuvo. So this psalm is an acrostic. It doesn't have one verse per letter of the alphabet. It has multiple verses per it goes through the alphabet, but the verses are not broken up in the same as when the alphabet verses are. So you can follow it in the revised JPS translation I'm about to read. Every time there's a new Hebrew letter, it's that the Hebrew letter is written there. So as I read, you can follow along. You can see every second or third verse is another one of the Hebrew letters. Of David, do not be vexed by evildoers. Do not be incensed by wrongdoers, for they soon wither like grass, like verdure fade away. Trust in God and do good. Abide in the land and remain loyal. Seek God's favor, and you will be granted the desires of your heart. Leave all to God. Be trusting. God will do it, causing your vindication to shine forth like the light, the justice of your case like the noonday sun. Be patient and wait for God. Do not be vexed by one who is prospering, the opponent who carries out schemes. Give up anger, abandon fury. Do not be vexed. It can only do harm. For evildoers will be cut off, but those who look to the God, they shall inherit the land. A little longer, and there will be no wicked. You will look at where they were, they will be gone. But the lowly shall inherit the land and delight in abundant well-being. The wicked scheme against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them. My sovereign laughs at them, knowing their day will come. The wicked draw their swords, bend their bows to bring down the lowly and needy, to slaughter the upright. Their swords shall pierce their own hearts, and their bows shall be broken. Better the little that a righteous person has than the great abundance of the wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but God is the support of the righteous. God is concerned for the needs of the blameless. Their portion lasts forever. They shall not come to grief in bad times. In famine they shall eat their fill. But the wicked shall perish, and God's enemies shall be consumed like meadow grass consumed in smoke. The wicked borrow and do not repay. The righteous are generous and keep giving. Those blessed by God shall inherit the land, but those who are cursed shall be cut off. People's steps are made firm by God, when their way is delight to God. Though they stumble, they do not fall down, for God gives them support. I have been young and am now old, but I have never seen someone righteous abandoned, or their children seeking bread. They are always generous and lend, and their children are held blessed. Shun evil and do good, and you shall abide forever. For God loves what is right and does not abandon those who are faithful. They are preserved forever, while the children of the wicked will be cut off. The righteous shall inherit the land and abide forever in it. The mouth of the righteous utters wisdom, and their tongue speaks what is right. The teaching of their God is in their heart. Their feet do not slip. The wicked watch for the righteous, seeking to put them to death. God will not abandon them to their power, and will not let them be condemned in judgment. Look to God and keep to the godly way, and you will be raised high, that you may inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, you shall see it. I saw the wicked, powerful, well-rooted, like a robust native tree. Suddenly they vanished and were gone. I sought them, but they were not to be found. Mark the blameless, note the upright, for there is a future for the person of integrity. But transgressors shall be utterly destroyed. The future of the wicked shall be cut off. The deliverance of the righteous comes from God, their stronghold in the time of trouble. God helps them and rescues them from the wicked and delivers them. For in God they seek refuge. I'll read one more translation. This one from the Rabbi Richard Levy. Here again, he tries to translate in a way that preserves the sense of the acrostic of David. Avoid getting fired up because of those who feed on evil, and do not seethe with envy at those who act wickedly, for like grass they will soon be cut down. They will wither like green herbs. Believe in Adonai and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on faith. Fill yourself with joy over Adonai, who will grant you the petitions of your heart. Cast your path before Adonai. Trust in God, and the Holy One will act. God will bring forth justice for you like light, and judgments in your favor will shine like the brightness of noon. Devote yourself to Adonai. Wait longingly for God. Do not get fired up against one whose path prospers, against the one who does wicked things. Erase wrath and forsake fury. Do not get fired up only to do evil, for evildoers shall be cut off. But those who wait hopefully for God, they shall inherit the earth. For in a little while the wicked one is gone. Look carefully at her place, and she is gone. For the humble shall inherit the earth and fill themselves with joy at the abundance of peace. Greedy, wicked people plot against the just and gnash their teeth against them. Adonai laughs at the wicked, seeing that their day is coming. Heinous folk have unsheathed their sword and bent their bow to fell the pure and the needy and slaughter those on an upright path. Their sword will enter their own heart, and their bows shall be shattered. Indeed, better the little that belongs to the just person than the abundance that belongs to a multitude of wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, while Adonai upholds the just. Just ruler Adonai knows the days of the unblemished. Their inheritance shall be eternal. They shall not be shamed in an evil time, and in days of famine they shall be satiated. Know that the wicked shall perish, and that the enemies of Adonai, like the fat of lambs, are consumed in smoke. Consumed. Lo, a wicked person posts a loan and does not repay, while the just person acts graciously and gives. Let those whom God has blessed inherit land, while those cursed by the Holy One will be cut off. Man's steps have their foundation from Adonai. God delights in each woman's path. Should they fall, they are not hurled down, for Adonai supports their hand. Not in my youth, nor in my old age, have I seen a just person abandoned or their seed searching for bread. All day long they act graciously and lend, and their seed becomes a blessing. Oh, turn from evil doing, rather do good, and dwell till time everlasting. For Adonai loves justice and will not abandon the members of the covenant. They are protected forever, but the seed of the wicked is cut off. Just people shall inherit the land, and they shall dwell forever upon it. Quietly the mouth of the just meditates on wisdom, and their tongue utters judgment. The Torah of their God is in their heart. Their steps will not totter. Ruthless people look on a just person and seek to kill him. Adonai will not abandon him in that one's hand, nor let him be condemned when he is judged. Steadfastly hope in Adonai and keep God's way, and the Eternal will raise you up to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, you will see. Too often have I watched the wicked be ruthless, spreading out like a native plant, its leaves luxuriant. Then he passes by, and behold, he is no more. Though I searched for him, I found him not. Uplift the innocent person, mark the upright, for there is future for a peaceful person, but the wicked shall be wiped out together. The future of the wicked is cut off. Victory for the just is from Adonai, their stronghold in time of trouble. Adonai will help them and rescue them. God rescues them from the vicious with victory, for they have taken refuge in Adonai, in God. All right. Reactions, thoughts. Murray.
Just a general observation, this psalm seems to be an extension of the previous psalm, almost the same type of theme.
Yeah, say a little more about that. What do you see that's similar?
Well, it's how to conduct, what to do, and the evildoers will be struck down, will not succeed. But if one follows the righteous path, one will succeed. And of course, we have some of the same references about being young in the Bechat Hamazon, and that the righteous person never lacked bread. That's the theme, and it is how shall I say? Again, it is not thematic that has one column that we address to that point. Each line has a separate meaning, a separate guidance.
Great. So Murray says, look, this psalm is following right up on Psalm 36. Psalm 36 also dealt with the righteous and the wicked. Psalm 36 also used the metaphor of sustenance, of the bread of that God feeds the righteous, that the righteous never go hungry. That we also see in Psalm 37. There's a sense of the the way that the wicked are going to be completely cut off, right? Psalm 36 ends, there the evildoers lie fallen, thrust down, unable to rise. And here in Psalm 37, again, we have images of the wicked are going to have their bones broken. They're going to have their own spears and swords are going to pierce their own hearts. Their bows are going to be completely destroyed. The when the righteous stumble and fall, God picks them up and holds them and prevents them from getting too grievously injured. But the wicked are they're going to get hurt. And one thing that I think is different between Psalm 37 and Psalm 36 is that Psalm 37 has a refrain of the way in which the the righteous will inherit the land. The wicked will not be able to inherit the land. The focus on the land itself is, I think, not present in Psalm 36, but a lot of the themes, as Murray pointed out, a lot of the themes, and especially this idea of sustenance, is continuous between Psalm 36 and Psalm 37. Psalm 37 is a really long psalm. Murray says it might be hard to get some sense of the broader theme of the whole psalm, but different chunks of it might resonate in different kinds of ways. But I do think that there's a sense that this psalm is about the importance of waiting for God to protect the righteous, and and that if you see a wicked person flourishing like a native plant, don't worry. The wicked is also gonna get their just desserts, right? God is going to punish the wicked. And so there's a strong sense throughout this whole psalm of waiting. Mishka. You have to unmute. Yeah, there you go.
One of the things that struck me was the fact that that no one, wicked or not, has to do anything. They're passive, whereas God is doing it all. God has all of the action, and I can't see much action on the part of everybody else. There isn't anything that the righteous do. I mean, they are righteous, but they're not doing anything. They're being treated by God for good work or not, but not explaining anything, not saying anything that they deserve to be righteous.
Well, this is interesting because I wonder if trusting in the Lord, taking delight in the Lord, desisting from anger, being patient and waiting for the Lord, right? They are not active actions the way that, like, feed the hungry would be an active action, right? Clothe the naked would be an active action, right? We get those in other parts of Psalms. But take delight in God, be patient and wait for God. These are actions that are being requested of the righteous. Now, I don't know, like I totally hear what you're saying, right? You're like, I want the righteous to be righteous in their actions. I want the psalm to be about the righteous actions that the righteous are doing. And here the psalmist is saying, be patient, just sit there and wait. But actually, I think the psalmist is giving us this insight that patience and trust also sometimes require active action. It is not easy. It is not obvious to sometimes be patient, right? We want the arc of justice to bend quicker than it bends, right? We want things to just happen like, with the snap of our fingers. We want it to just can't the world just bend the right way? And actually trusting in the long term, trusting in that is a part of justice work that might be the hardest part in some ways of justice work. And it isn't passive. It is an active waiting. Now, I'm saying this because I think that that's the view of the psalmist. I'm like pretty young. I tend to be more impulsive. I like you. I would like the actions of the righteous to be more active. I completely agree with you. But I think that the right now, there is one example in this psalm of an active act, and that is generosity. And over and over, it describes the righteous as lending generously, giving generously. The wicked is the one who doesn't give, but the righteous is or the wicked takes loans but never repays them, whereas the righteous lends and lends and lends and never expects to be repaid, right? There is an active action that the righteous are doing, and that's being generous with their money. But I do think that I do think that the psalmist thinks that waiting is not an obvious thing to do, and that it does take work. And so I just wanted to push back a little bit on the idea that the righteous are completely passive in this psalm, because I think trusting in God, that's an active action. Larry.
I'd go further and say that this is the great action here is to deny your human nature. It's to convert your nature from the kind of alpha, me first, get what you can, what I want should happen, dominant, domineering, ownership, all the things that the animal part of us is brought forward. This is saying, stop everything that evolutionarily has worked to get you this far. It's now time to reverse that. Let it go and acquire a God nature, a new nature, be reborn, remade in God's image. Don't become a perfect human. Dismiss that now. You're about to become something else. And I think that's a very active thing to do. And that is also the message of the Sermon on the Mount, which people don't get.
Yeah, there are definitely there's definitely language in this psalm that feels very consistent with the Sermon on the Mount. Any other yeah, Murray.
Just perhaps it might be more of a sidebar, but it's something that Alba had raised the question of the power of the community and the ability of the community to do and to preserve and to perpetuate. That the Psalms seem to be emphasizing the conduct and the deeds of the individual, and thus do not bring in the communal part of it, a communal aspect of it. In the Torah, we're told we're a nation of people, or Kohanim, or other groups, that there is that community cause and a community reason for behavior and acting and dealing with each other. But the psalmists seem to be only emphasizing the individual.
Yeah,
Sort
I
of,
mean,
again,
I think that in some ways this psalm is right. The psalm is speaking to an individual, right? This psalm is speaking to an individual, not to a community. But the psalm is definitely in relationship with the community in some ways. Like, for example, in verse 3, B'tach Badonai v'aseh tov shechon eretz ure'ei emunah, right? Trust in the Lord and do good wherever you dwell, shepherd others faithfully, right? The concept of shepherding others faithfully, that is lifted up by the Radak, one of the medieval commentators, as a way of describing what it means to be in relationship with others who are trying to also be righteous and do good. Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Weinrib, he writes about this. Choosing a vocation is a challenge. The person of faith wants a vocation consistent with her faith. She hopes that her vocation will enhance her personal faith and will advance the cause she professes. The vocation that best fits these objections is the profession of teaching. Teaching need not be done in the formal context of a classroom. The coach on the football field, the rabbi in her pulpit, the poet at his writing desk, and the Jewish communal worker, all are teachers. A biblical metaphor for a teacher is the shepherd. Radak finds this metaphor in the 3rd verse of our psalm: wherever you dwell, shepherd others faithfully. In whatever circumstances you find yourself, there is an opportunity to teach. The teacher shepherds others. And I will give you shepherds after my own heart who will pasture you with knowledge and skill, Jeremiah promises in chapter 3. Teaching others in whatever form is challenging. Its material rewards are few. Glory and prestige are seldom forthcoming. Many smugly utter that insidious wisdom, those who can do, those who can't teach, which, by the way, goes in some ways to, I think, Mishka's question about, is this an active psalm? Are we doing anything here? Insufficiently rewarded, unappreciated, insulted. How is a teacher to cope? Our psalm offers encouragement. Do not fret. Desist from anger. The humble shall inherit the land. Better is the little which the righteous man has than the great wealth of the wicked. Some teachers adopt an attitude of resignation and passivity. Such is the lot of the teacher or rabbi or communal worker. They say, my rewards are of an eternal nature. I am willing to forego worldly success and honor. One sage, a teacher in his own right, found the opposite lesson in verse 23 of our psalm. His name was Rabbi Yaakov Loberbaum, a rabbi of the community of Lisa in 19th century Poland. Among his numerous works is a precious commentary on the Pentateuch, the Nachalat Yaakov. There he writes, a person must make every effort to succeed in life. He must not passively rely upon omens or miracles. This is the meaning of the verse. The steps of a man are made steady by the Lord, but when God delights in the path that he takes, that he takes. Although God directs the fate of every person, thus making his steps steady, God nevertheless desires that a person exert every means at his disposal to succeed. Then God will grant him providential abundance. An image of the communal worker as a servile individual who is fundamentally naive, long-suffering, and willing to tolerate abuse. Rav Yaakov asserts the contrary. Devout trust in God is perfectly consistent with insistence upon deserved rewards, due recognition, and maintenance of self-respect. The spiritual benefits of public service must not come at the expense of appropriate material rewards. So I think, right, that comment on this psalm, I think, really does raise up many of the themes that we've been discussing. The theme of teaching, the theme of waiting, the theme of action versus inaction. What is necessary, right? And here Mishka was feeling, ugh, this psalm just tells people to sit passively and wait. But this rabbi, the Rav Yaakov of Lisa, he says, based on this psalm, we shouldn't we shouldn't be satisfied as communal workers or rabbis with just this, but we should want our recognition. We should want our recognition in this world. We should get the rewards for our hard work. All as part of our, like, asking for that is not unmeaningful, and that I think that's a really important. It's a very interesting and important lesson, and specifically interesting to draw that lesson from this psalm that seems so much about waiting for God. I think it's a very powerful. I think it's a very powerful message. Other comments, reactions?
Yes.
Marcia?
Well, it just seems very utopian and not realistic. We know someone who wouldn't read that verse, Na'ar Hayiti, because they didn't think it was realistic.
Yeah. A lad I was, and now I'm old, and I have never seen a just man forsaken and his seed seeking bread. Really? You've never seen somebody who is righteous but poor? Right? Of course the psalmist had seen righteous and poor people. In fact, the psalmist says, better the small amount of money that the righteous person has than the wealth of the rich person. Right? The psalmist says, I have seen the arrogant, wicked man taking root like a flourishing plant. It's not like in this psalm, the psalmist knows the counter arguments, right? The psalmist isn't naive. The psalmist isn't saying, "Oh, there are no righteous poor people," or "I've never seen the children of a righteous person literally beg for bread." Either the psalmist is saying that even when the righteous person begs for bread, they are still not abandoned by God. That's one possible reading. I think that seems like a very consistent reading with the context of the psalm. Or it's saying, like, if you keep reading that sentence, whoops, sorry. If you keep reading that sentence, the just person, the righteous person, keeps lending even when he himself is poor enough to ask for bread. And what makes him righteous is that even when he is on the public dole, he keeps lending free of charge. He keeps giving tzedakah, and that attitude is an attitude which will garner him so much respect from the community that they will make sure that his children are fed. I don't know. Like, I think that both are reasonable readings of the verses of the Psalms, like either that God doesn't forsake the righteous, or that the community ultimately doesn't forsake the children of the righteous. I think that I don't think that the psalmist is being descriptive when the psalmist says, I've never seen a just man forsaken. I think the psalmist is being poetical. But right, it can't literally mean what it says, because the psalmist gives all of these other verses that, right, I have seen an arrogant, wicked man taking root like a flourishing plant. It's not like the psalmist hasn't experienced the other aspects. Yeah, Larry.
Back to the again, the interpretation in the New Testament of this is also stated here, that blessed are the poor in spirit, and to be satisfied with your daily bread, not worrying about tomorrow's bread, not worrying about more than you need, just your basic needs. the temptation is to want more than your basic needs.
Yeah.
This is almost a statement of rein in your needs. Stop pretending you need more. Just what you need. You'll have more joy, more nachas in that than in striving after far more than you need, and prestige and fame and popularity, success. I think that's what he's eschewing here. And blessed are the merciful. That is an action in mercy, showing mercy, not just the alms, not just it's an attitude of mercy, an attitude to give, an attitude. It's almost moving it from action, physical action, to the heart. And you feel it's a heart of simplicity and poverty and comfort with your basic needs. And there you will find joy.
Yeah. So
Do
the
that.
Sermon on the Mount, as described by Matthew chapter 5, it's one of the most famous speeches that Jesus gives, and we can look at it. I think you should be able to see it on the screen. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on the mountainside and sat down, and his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." I do think that there is a lot of similarities between Jesus's phrases here and some of the phrases from our psalm. I'm not 100% convinced on Larry's interpretation, but I definitely agreed with Larry that there are phrases from this psalm that immediately called to mind the Sermon on the Mount. It continues. "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven."
He was teaching Jews.
Yes, Matthew, there is no question. There is no question that Matthew was written originally in Aramaic to a Jewish audience, and that Matthew sees his role as explaining Jesus's teachings to a Jewish audience. And the first followers of Jesus were Jewish. There's no question about that. Also, there have been some very interesting and useful studies of Jesus's teachings in comparison to some of the other first century teachings that we have that are contained in Jewish traditions and in apocryphal traditions. And so you can read Jesus's arguments in the context of, say, the debates between Hillel and Shammai, who were contemporaries of Jesus, and you can see where sometimes Jesus takes a more Hillel-like position, and sometimes Jesus takes a more Shammai-like position. So, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I recommend the Jewish Annotated New Testament by Mark Brettler and Amy Amy, what's her name? It'll come to me. And the Jewish Annotated New Testament, it's worth reading through, because they elevate in the context of both Jewish tradition and Christian teachings, how the first century Israelite population would have been receiving those teachings, and in what ways did the later tradition misunderstand or differently understand those teachings, both in Christianity and in Judaism. And so that's a very worthwhile book. I've also read The Bible With and Without Jesus, which is also Amy Jill Levine, that's her name, which is also worth reading. And a very similar, I mean, it's it does some of that same stuff. All right, let's look at some of the liturgical uses of this psalm. Verse 6 is quoted in the Slichot for Erev Rosh Hashanah, the penitential prayers on the morning before Rosh Hashanah, in an anthology that has verses from Psalms, and one verse from Isaiah, one verse from Genesis. Do not enter into judgment with us, for no living soul will be justified before you. And God judges the inhabited world with justice, and the peoples with righteousness. Righteousness and justice are the foundations of your throne. Kindness and truth go before your presence. From before you, let our judgment come forth. Let your eyes behold my uprightness, and bring forth as the light of our righteousness and as our judgment on the noonday. Right. So here, on Erev Rosh Hashanah is understood as Yom Hadin, the day of judgment, the day when all people are brought before God for judgment. The prayer here is that God will see our righteousness, and that our judgment will be like light and not like darkness. And it's our verse, the verse from Psalm 37, verse 6, but it is rewritten into the plural, which we've seen the rabbis are perfectly happy to quote from Psalms, but to change the tense of them, to change the tense of the verses from Psalms, which usually is changing it from singular to plural, because the Psalms are written in this very, as somebody pointed out, this very individual voice. A lot of the Psalms are written as like personal prayers, spiritual relationships between the psalmist and God. But when they're used in our tefillah, in our prayer book, they are adapted to be used as a community talking to God. And so then we turn them into we turn them into the plural voice. All right, so verse 21.
Right, okay.
Verse 21 is a proof text from a passage in Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot is a section of the Mishnah that the purpose of it is to describe the passing of the tradition from one generation of rabbis to the next. It's sort of the idea of the importance of the importance of the chain of transmission of Jewish tradition. So it's traditional to study Pirkei Avot on Shabbat afternoons during the summer. And one of the aspects of this so one section from the end of chapter 2 of Pirkei Avot describes Rabbi Yochanan's 5 students. So this is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, very appropriate for this part of very appropriate for this week, since we studied since we observed Lag BaOmer just on Sunday, just a couple days ago, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is very associated with Lag BaOmer, since it was his students that were being killed by the plague. So Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 students, and his students were Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya, Rabbi Yosei HaKohen, Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel, and Rabbi Elazar ben Arak. He used to praise his students. He would say of Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, he is a plaster-sealed cistern that never loses a drop. Okay? So Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, anything you taught him, he remembered everything. Mind like a steel trap, we would say, right? But he described it not like a steel trap, but like a plaster-sealed cistern, okay? Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, the praises, the way that his teacher, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, praised him was saying, happy is the woman who bore him. Of Rabbi Yosei HaKohen, he would say, a truly pious man. Of Rabbi Shimon ben Netanel, he would say, one who truly fears sin. And of Rabbi Elazar ben Arak, he described that student as Mayan HaMitgaber, a powerfully flowing spring. So what the cistern doesn't lose a drop of teaching. The powerfully flowing spring, he is a creative force. He's bringing new teachings into the world. He used to say, if all the sages of Israel were on one side of the balance and Rabbi Elazar ben Hyrcanus were on the other side, he would outweigh them all. And Abba Shaul said that he used to say, if all the sages in Israel were on one side of the balance with Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus and Rabbi Elazar ben Arak were on the other side, he would outweigh them all. Okay, so clearly some days he really loved his creative student, and some days he really loved his the student who never forgot anything. Just powerful, right? And we have stories about all of these guys. And when you think about how they were described by their teacher, it does sort of affect how you go forward. All right, so he said to them, go out and see which is the right path, a good path to which a person should cleave. And Rabbi Eliezer said, a good eye. And Rabbi Yoshua said, a good colleague. And Rabbi Yossi said, a good neighbor. And Rabbi Shimon said, the ability to see what the future will yet bring. And Rabbi Elazar said, a good heart. And he said to them, I favor the words of Elazar ben Arak, because your words are included in his. If you have a good heart, then you're going to have a good eye and be a good colleague and find good neighbors, and you're going to see what the future will bring. He said to them further, go out and see which is the evil path, from which one should distance oneself. Rabbi Eliezer said, distance yourself from the ayin hara, the evil eye. And Rabbi Yoshua said, distance yourself from the evil colleague, an evil companion. And Rabbi Yossi said, distance yourself from an evil neighbor. And Rabbi Shimon said, if you borrow money and fail to repay it, for borrowing from other people is the same as borrowing from the omnipresent. As it is said, a wicked person borrows but fails to repay, whereas a righteous person is generous and gives back the funds owed. And Rabbi Elazar said, an evil heart. He said to them, I favor the words of Elazar ben Arak, for your words are included in his. So the reason why I brought this is because Rabbi Yosei quotes Psalm 37. He says the worst thing that you can have in the world is a person who borrows and does not repay. And the proof text is from our psalm. So it's an interesting thought, right? Like which is worse, the evil neighbor, the evil companion, or the one who borrows and does not repay? It's an interesting thought experiment. Yes, Alba.
Something you just said made me think of something. The time is a kind of a lie. I mean, it really doesn't exist. But you have to believe in it because we count our days, according to time. And so we invent this system to help us get one step closer to death every every day. And we work in the hours of our lives. I make a whole bunch of apple pies, and that takes time. And then somebody eats those apple pies, and there's no more, and I make more apple pies. And I hope that somebody will give me some kind of remuneration for the ingredients to my pies and for the time that I spent making those pies. And so we invent this thing called money. And money's another lie. It's, how many people are going to take rubles from a Ukrainian for a cup of coffee? Nobody. Money has to be supported by some kind of heartfelt belief that your time is worth something, and we have to believe that our administration as a country or a kingdom or whatever is going to respect our time. And that piece of paper, which is, isn't worth anything, you give it to a gorilla, he's not going to take that. Bananas maybe, but not this piece of paper. And so this piece of paper represents my time. It's a little capsule of my time. And so, like, if you lend your time to somebody in the form of little capsules of paper and coins, and stuff, you want someone to give it back to you because you gave it to them in good faith that they respect your time and that they're going to give back when they can, carve out a piece of their time to give it back to you in forms of little bits of paper and coins. And so this idea that somebody doesn't pay back really doesn't respect your time a whole lot, or the pies that I made. And then the other thing is like betrayal. Your next door neighbor, who takes your lawnmower and never gives it back, or the friend who just says you're their friend forevermore, and then just walks off, and just leaves you there in the lurch with everything, the bills and the this and the that. So I think we're talking about time, capsules of time, and respect from one person to another for your time. And in talking about whether somebody is a good person or a bad person or a greedy person, whatever happened to Bernie Madoff? Did he get cancer or something? Because, when someone says they'll get their just due, here in Spain, we have a kind of a Bernie Madoff also. His name was Zaplana. And in the end, the guy, got this horrible cancer. So maybe it was the stress he was living under. Maybe it was, he finally came to the realization that he'd been stealing everybody's time just a little bit too long. And his body just says, forget you, buddy, and left. And so they died of cancer. But when I hear these things, the stuff that you're saying is kind of nice in that it all comes down to, do you respect my time? Do you respect the product I'm making? It's just an apple pie. It's not any better or worse than a car or, some big bank. It's a pie and it's worth my time and you're eating it. There. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Murray.
Just a quick word reminded me, looking at that about borrowing and not repaying, is something that you teach at when you recite psalms at funeral. said, do not retract the promise made. And that to me is one of the key words in conduct in human life, is one's word, one's given, on which people rely. That's very important.
Yeah. The Psalms are very, very intent about integrity and doing what you say you're going to do, and the importance of personal of your personal speech. That's right. All right, let's close with this paragraph of the spiritual applications of our psalm from Rabbi Richard Levy. We have seen spoken above some above he means in his commentary on this psalm. So obviously we didn't look at all of the commentary. Some of the aspects of theodicy, God's justice, which this psalm confronts. We didn't talk a ton about it, but we talked a little bit about it. You know, with respect to I was young and now I'm old, the stuff that Marcia was bringing up. We have spoken above of some of the aspects of theodicy, which this psalm confronts. But it is important to see this not only as a theological statement of the issue, but as a plea to people who have suffered at the seeming injustice of a world where innocents get hurt and wicked people prosper, right? The psalm describes the world as it is, a world where innocents get hurt and wicked people prosper. The opening verse cries out, avoid burning up because of those who feed on evil, right? Don't get too angry. That isn't healthy, right? We do burn up. We do feel abandoned by God and other people. We seethe that others are getting away with their ill-gotten gains. But this psalm suggests that the more we obsess over the injustices in the world, the more we get dragged down into evil doing ourselves. This psalm urges a change in attitude, trust in God, and a change in behavior. Plant seeds of good in the world that can crowd out the spreading weeds of injustice. The Psalm's assertion that the world will ultimately be our inheritance will come true if we grow a world that is filled with generosity, with the doing of the Torah's mitzvot, with gracious behavior. The psalm urges us not to dwell on the severity of the wounds we suffer, but on the fact that we were rescued in mid-fall. Something more tragic might have happened to us. If we are able to bless God, to praise God, even in the midst of misfortune, it is a sign that we are inheriting the world because we are helping to reshape it in a form that wants us as its heirs. People may call us naive, Pollyanna-ish. In the past, we ourselves may have shrunk from the view that it could have been worse. But if we search for evidence that God has not abandoned us, we will convince ourselves, even if we do not convince anyone else, that this too is for the good. And the deed to the world that we are helping to build will have just arrived on our doorstep. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Of course.
Well, no.
Yes, thank